DDRG since it was first established in the summer of 2008. And the aim of the group was to provide meaningful, appropriate consultation with disabled people in relation to the new lines. Well, the DDRG gives us the means to undertake meaningful, appropriate consultation with people with a range of impairments, because it's important to look at accessibility, indeed inclusive design, in the context of a range of disabilities, as opposed to maybe the historical approach that's been taken just to look at, for example, wheelchair users, visually impaired people get out and about on the Metrolink network. As part of the evolution of the DDRG from where it started in 2008 to where it is today, we've come to a point whereby historically it was just about the Metrolink infrastructure. We've now got to a position, for example, where we're looking at the emergency evacuation procedures, so it's that customer experience. We're looking at how even challenging certain areas where there's no guidance, for example, how do profoundly deaf people use emergency helplines? How would a profoundly deaf person summon help if they're in a lift that was broken down? In terms of innovation, I think there's two areas really, because what we need to recognise is the guidance standards that we use in some areas are actually quite dated. So arguably the DDRG is certainly on the Metrolink network helping to influence the next generation of accessibility guidance. But I think we should also take into account, in principle, it gives us an opportunity to really promote the work that the group's doing at national level. By that, for example, the Department for Transport have got an action in their Accessibility Action Plan to review inclusive design, inclusive mobility. So again, some of the solutions at local level here in Manchester in turn could be influencing the next generation. I think my vision is, given that we've now got the DDRG to a point where it's established, it's working well, we're using methods that are tried and tested in terms of consulting with the DDRG members and having these cross discussions with members of the construction side, etc. What I'd like to do is to start to explore ways and means of helping the DDRG evolve to a point where it becomes a wider Transport for Greater Manchester asset. You need to bear in mind Metrolink is one aspect of the business that Transport for Greater Manchester is, and over time, I can definitely see the benefits of expanding that remit of the DDRG.
The DDRG is a fantastic and diverse group of people with a range of different abilities and disabilities. So it's from people like myself, the electric wheelchair users, from manual wheelchair users, people with hearing and visual impairments, learning difficulties, the whole remit, working with professional people and the Transport for Greater Manchester to make accessibility issues and the whole customer journey that much better for the people of Greater Manchester, and hopefully, alongside doing that, set a benchmark for transport across not only the UK but also Europe. Well, it's very much an holistic approach that the DDRG gets involved in. It gets involved in issues of accessibility, issues of signage, drop curbs, small technical details, through to the entire customer experience, educating people involved in the transportation, whether that be the drivers, people who are managing the signage, to set real benchmarks for transport within Greater Manchester and hopefully across the UK. I mean, we ultimately advise, input, consult and co-produce every aspect that can relate to people with and without disabilities. I think it's important to recognise that the DDRG is an award-winning group, and the reason they've achieved that is because people with disabilities have lived experience. They've actually got professional expertise in their own environment. We're talking about people who have got fantastic experience in terms of accessibility and people who've worked in the professional environment. So what they're able to do is to provide a unique perspective that contractors wouldn't otherwise have in terms of many different things. So it could be whether something works practically in terms of where drop curbs are, where the upstands are around car parks, lighting, signage, easy read, the heights of the smart ticketing, but also in terms of new innovation, to provide a unique perspective on how things work, whether that be accessibility on the web or anything really that can relate and support people with and without disabilities.
I think the DDRG is a group of disabled people with lived experience, with a range of impairments and disabilities that come together to work constructively with TFGM, Metrolink and contractors to try and enhance the transport experience for disabled passengers. This is done through several avenues really. There are regular meetings and also site visits. So you could argue that we have a constructive input at every stage of the design process during the expansion of Metrolink. But it's not just focusing on the practical side of things. We've also had a real input in terms of literature, accessibility of the website, input into how to train Metrolink staff for a better customer service experience for disabled passengers. And having recently used a public transport system abroad, I can confirm that the UK and the TFGM and Metrolink system in particular is really a leader within the field in terms of access. Well, it builds on a disabled person's self-esteem, and being able to get out and about builds on somebody's self-confidence from there. They might want to get involved in something like the DDRG, and I would encourage people to go on. What people need to understand, though, is it's a very constructive environment. It's not an old system of consultation. It's co-production where we all have an interest in making the thing better. Well, it can have a life-enhancing effect, really. The ability to get out and about leads to people building self-confidence, which could then lead to volunteering, gaining employment, and becoming an active citizen in the local community. Historically, transport has been a major barrier to disabled people taking part in the community and getting jobs and stuff. And we're having an active and real role in breaking down that barrier. The ideal scenario for me is that disabled people don't have an issue when using the Metrolink. Hopefully, us working at the early design stages and things like that to give advice to contractors, TFGM and other interested parties will make the disabled person's transport experience seamless.
In terms of what DDRG has done as a group, I think we've actually really grown as a group in the time I've been a member. Right from day one, we're a very different group now, I think, to how we started off. There was a little bit of mistrust at the beginning, people not quite sure what the expectations were, who was bringing what to the table, how it was going to work out, whether there was some sort of hidden agendas or anything like that. And we've kind of moved on, I think, just so far to this point where there's mutual respect. People understand what the contractors are dealing with, what TFGM are dealing with, what Metrolink are dealing with, what we can and what we can't do. And I think we've hit this point. I think I kind of nailed it the other week when I was walking through Manchester and I needed to use a tram. And I just thought, we're in such a different place to where we were, for example, 5 years ago, where from my own perspective, I can go and use a tram stop and a tram, and I feel very confident about doing that. Whereas I wouldn't necessarily have felt that way 5 years ago. And a lot of that is the stuff that DDRG have done. The stuff around consistent layouts, about accessibility of information, about knowing where stuff is, and when it isn't there, knowing why it isn't there, what variations there might be. And just having this huge amount of confidence that actually things that previously you felt like there were sort of maybe barriers to, or you weren't 100% sure on where you were going and what you were doing and what you were looking for, that's changed. That's really changed. And the way I look at it is that if that's changed for me, that's changing for anyone with a disability. Obviously it's different extents with different people, but that's changing across the board really. Yeah. So I kind of look at the Metrolink stops occasionally and think, well, we did that.
The way they developed choosing people in the first place, making sure that it was well-rounded in terms of everybody comprising of a different impairment, which brings every sort of attribute to the group. So we're all experts in our own right, but then we've all got backgrounds professionally as well, so that plays into it. So some people have strengths in one area, some people have it in another area. Well, I've got over 20 years using an electric wheelchair, and before that being in a manual chair with a young family, and so I've got experience using a Metrolink with young children being in a wheelchair, and I think that's quite rare actually, because it's not that common, and people are quite surprised, so that when you're actually getting on a train or a tram, they don't expect you to have children in tow, and they don't make provision for that. And so the arrangement of seating has been quite important when we've been working around that area. But I think overall, travelling around Manchester and working in Manchester, so whether it's for social reasons or professional reasons, it's really important to have accessible transport links. I think what it would be without is what it was previously to this being set up, and I was too scared to use a transistor beforehand because there just wasn't enough information, things weren't highlighted enough, it just didn't feel safe. And I'd had an accident involving the doors, and it just makes your blood run cold, so it takes a lot to get over that, and so this group has helped me sort of do that slowly by changing the way it's done, knowing what the dangers are.
We've worked with Transport for Greater Manchester, who are our partner in this, to make stuff more accessible, like the Metrolink lines, which we've been to. We've been to Derpa, Rochdale, and also perhaps the website. It's improving all of the time. We've made a fantastic improvement to the DDRG. Within Transport for Greater Manchester, we all should be very proud of ourselves to be part of a great scheme, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will continue on.
It's been a learning curve, I think, for all of us. In particular, some of the professional people who we've had to deal with it. Dealing with blind people is not an easy way. They have to explain a lot, in great detail. They can't just pass me a photograph and say that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the contractors have really come on. I understand a lot better now the needs of different, certainly mobility issues. I think using a guide on the Metrolink is not difficult, but it's different. I suspect using wheelchairs is a lot more difficult. Again, if we go to the operating side, which is essential, we've managed to go on trams before, they've come into public service. And I think the drivers, because there must be lots of new drivers because the system's expanding so much. And I think that the staff have benefited as well, as the contractors and the designers and the officers at CFGM who are always with us, and I think they've learned quite a lot from the group. As a blind person, the usage of tactile markings and sounds very important to the blind person, so the announcements on the trams have got to be nice and clear. The announcements at the stops have got to be nice and clear. Yeah. We're still hoping that when the system is up and running fully, that there'll be audible announcements on the stops, because that's crucial. I'm very keen really on the electronic side of it, if you like. The use of GPS, I think, would be a great, for all of us to look at, and be a great boon to people with visual impairment.
I was passionate about the DDRG because its policies about improving lives for disabled people were believable, and I could relate to them. And the things that we do to ensure that disabled people have a right to equal access in society, really appealed to me. So the difference that it's made to disabled people is that it's improved the Metrolink, it's improved how we function at meetings, and for the general public, disabled public as well, so it's really made a difference to them as well.
I feel that I really want to be clear about the DDRG involvement in the community, because myself being deaf, but I've been like travelling myself on the tram, and some of the information, it can be quite confusing, and of course depending on the driver, they're not deaf aware, they're not aware of some of the other things, or they weren't aware before. So now I feel that by being involved, we've got a better relationship building up for getting everything organised. And my own experiences and the experiences of others, we're able to push forward and make improvements. So I'm hoping that we're really going to bring the service up to a higher quality by doing this involvement with the DDRG.
And because we've won a national award, I really do believe, as some other interviewees have said, that this is only the beginning of the journey for the DDRG. I believe we can have a national, a European-wide and an international impact.
I think the potential for the DDRG is absolutely is huge. I think it's limitless, really. I think the expertise that we've got within the DDRG, as has been recognised through the awards that they've achieved, is that, you know, at the moment it's looking specifically at the Metrolink, but I think that could be a benchmark across any transport, whether that be within Greater Manchester or outside of that. I think the potential is huge, and I really do think that the knowledge and expertise that's brought in and the diversity is a unique one and can give a perspective in terms of transport and potentially other areas, you know, in many areas.
My name's Alan Lowe. I'm a member of the Metrolink project team. Worked on Metrolink for a number of years, since about the year 2000. I've recently become involved in the DDRG as part of my role, and found it a really rewarding and valuable contribution. The DDRG, they were appointed in 2008. Breakthrough UK are contracted to provide the DDRG members and bring them along every month. They get involved in site visits and meetings. Lots of people in Metrolink, from contractors, designers, the operators involved in DDRG. They really are a multifaceted resource. They've been involved in all kinds of aspects of Metrolink, from the design of the stops, the design of the trams. They've also helped us in developing some more of the customer initiatives in relation to disabled people. So they've been involved in smartphone application, smart ticketing, and also development of the key thing they've been involved in is the development of the Metrolink Access Guide. It isn't just about the infrastructure, tactiles, etc. Although that's a very important part of what they do, it's also about more of the operational aspects, and all sorts of disabled people, from those, as you say, with a visual impairment, hearing impairment, mobility impairment, and also a mental impairment as well. So that is why it's important that the DDRG is as diverse as possible. I mean, Metrolink is already considered one of the most successful forms of public transport, but their involvement is really starting to raise. We want to raise the bar of Metrolink to make it even more accessible. We'd like to see Metrolink seen as the ultimate form of public transport, and hopefully other systems may be able to learn lessons from the improvements that we're influencing with the DDRG.